Okay, go.
Hi, my name is Alex Shvartsman. I'm a writer, translator, and editor from Brooklyn, New York. I've had over 100 short stories published in places like Analog, Nature, Strange Horizons, and lots of other magazines and anthologies. And my first novel, A Ridden's Crown, was published late last year. This is an epic political fantasy with lots of action and sort of Game of Thrones meets Breaking Bad is how I like to describe it. And that's what I'll be reading a chapter from that a little bit later. Back to you, Rosemary.
Thank you, Alex. I'm Rosemary Claire Smith. I'm a former archaeologist and have a passion for paleontology and dinosaurs. I have a number of stories in Analog, a story in Amazing, a bunch of things elsewhere, a full-length interactive fiction role-playing game called T-Rex Time Machine that's available from Choice of Games. And the story that I am going to read is not come out yet, but it has been sold. So it is going to be appearing shortly. The timing is a little bit iffy. And the story is called Dino Mansur. My feet plopped down onto the soft brown sand of the Montana coast. As it hit me that we were really here, Dr. Crundworth said, "If we run into any trouble whatsoever, you must get yourself back to the 21st century immediately. Don't hesitate." He pointed to my chronoporter. "You be sure to keep that strapped to your wrist." Patting an unzippered pocket of his freshly ironed safari vest, he said, "Of course, I keep mine right here. Not that I've ever had to cut and run from the Jurassic." He ran a hand over his perfectly groomed hair. "You picked the best Dino Mansur in the business, Dora." Dino Mansur, huh? How was that anything more than a self-aggrandizing cut-rate tour guide? I thought better of asking him for fear he might tell me at length. "You see," Dr. Cronworth continued, "it takes a sharp-eyed, sharp-eared dinomancer to lead you to the very finest creatures that Jurassic Montana has to offer. You want to see a brontosaurus or a herd of stegosauruses? Sure you do." Not waiting for my response, he plunged onward as he led me a short distance along the beach to where a rank stream, more sludge than water, snaked into the seaway. "Everybody loves him. I know the best viewing spots." Peering between the head-high ferns colonizing the stream bank, I said, "Actually, I'm interested in Allosaurus." "Isn't everyone?" My guide scowled. "Big, fierce predators are much scarcer than people imagine." "I came to hear its ferocious roar. From far enough away to be safe, that is." I switched on my top-of-the-line recorder, relishing the thought of the zillions of new fans I would attract if I could work those never-before-recorded bellows into my next indie album. They say it's terrifying. "Never heard one roar. Not in 4 years of dinomancy." "Why would it?" I guessed. "To show it's the biggest, meanest, badass predator to stomp into a clearing and terrorize the plant munchers." With a snort, he said, "You think so?" Dr. Cronworth's smartest man in the room attitude reminded me of my ex-husband. There came the sound of several big beasts crashing through the ferns and cycads. I pointed my recorder in their direction. "Stegosauruses," the dinomancer proclaimed. A herd of 3 adults and a handful of juveniles chowed down the undergrowth like Mesozoic mowing machines with atrocious table manners. "See those mega muscles on their hind legs?" I nodded, holding my recorder high. If an Allosaurus bellowed or even growled, that herd would be on the far side of Laurasia before you got halfway through your first scream. Allosaurus is a master at stalking and at the silent pounce, like lions and crocodiles. "No roaring?" I wasn't about to give up my dream of being the first to capture the predator's supposedly soul-chilling cries. Not likely. Ignorant guides will try and tell you that the male bellows to attract the female, or to intimidate the competition, or even to demarcate his territory. Nonsense. But now he not only warmed to his subject, but had resumed his infatuation with the sound of his own voice. The stegosauruses, not so much, as they were lumbering away. Do the females ever roar to summon their young, maybe? I couldn't go back into the studio with no new material. Well, Dora, the females are said to have the loudest voices. Not surprising, huh? I gave him a glare. Unfazed, Dr. Crundworth tried to take my arm to guide me around the psych had fallen across the game trail. I evaded his grasp, letting the giant fern frond swat him in the chest. Farther upstream, after I'd found myself grinding my teeth while enduring his discourse on Stegosaurus dentition, we came to a trough gouged into the mud bank. In it was a clutch of blue eggs as big as cantaloupes. Brontosaurus eggs, Dino Mansur pronounced. So where's the mother? I peered into the green maze of ferns. The females leave their eggs untended. My guide chattered on, way more than anyone could want to know, as to how an expectant Brontosaurus selected the right patch of mud for egg laying. I resigned myself to a full afternoon of his dino-splaining. When it got to be too much, I could insist that he shut up so I could record the ruffles of the Stegosauruses, if they returned, or other Jurassic critters. Dr. Crundworth leaned over the bank and gestured to emphasize a point. The soft mud gave way and he tumbled into the muddy stream, splattered the primordial ooze. I bit back my laughter. Are you all right? He squelched up the crumbling bank, strands of aquatic vines adorning his no longer impeccable hair. He yanked at the grime-coated zipper of his safari vest, struggling out of it with more effort than it takes a caterpillar to turn into a butterfly. I checked the volume level of my recorder, suddenly aware that the wilderness had grown silent. Twisting around, I glimpsed movement in the ferns. The foliage erupted with a flurry of talons and teeth. Dr. Crundworth yelped. Too late. An enormous jaw came down like a hatchet. My guide dropped his sodden vest and leaped backward, tumbling again into the stream. That left me to face the Allosaurus. My heart pounding, I dove for the ground, almost too frantic to see anything. The dinosaur's carrion breath engulfed me. I seized the thing that came to hand, the Dino Mansur's stopping safari vest, and flung it into the predator's face. Steak knife teeth snapped, slicing the fabric to ribbons. From the carnivore's mouth came the distinctive hum of the chronoporter activating. With a gulp, the Allosaurus sent the device down its thick throat. I rolled to one side. Plan B flashed into my head. I grabbed for Dr. Crundworth's hand, thinking to switch my own chronoporter on once I got hold of him. No dice. The carnivore swung its head to stare straight at me. Those were the longest seconds of my life, and my last ones, I was sure. Those seconds before the massive Allosaurus lifted its snout and uttered a soul-crushing bellow. Its roar cut off as the beast vanished. I blinked in astonishment. Behind me, the Dino Mansur came scrambling out of the water on all fours. His hand darted forward. He raised it, clutching my recorder. For once, he was silent. I took it from him, both of our hands shaking. The device was still running. I pressed replay. It had captured everything, including the roar. No. Wincing, I shut it off, certain I would never be able to bring myself to use that roar, and dreading that it would be with me always. Thank you.
This is what's missing with everybody is muted is you can't applaud. Oh, there we go. There are emojis for this apparently.
Thank you.
So where can we read this, or are you able to announce that yet?
I have not announced it yet,
Okay.
but it will be coming out, and I obviously with things the timing has gotten a little bit iffy, but I will have all the details on my website, rosemaryclairesmith.net, when the time comes. So why don't you do we want to go on to your story, Alec? And then if people have questions and comments and stuff, afterwards we can we can field them for both.
Sounds good. All right. So I will read a chapter. This is chapter 4, but it's fairly self-explanatory. You shouldn't have to know too much of what happened before. It'll kind of fill in the blanks for you. And this chapter is called The Ominous Prophecy. This is, it's not going to show the book in my background because the virtual background deletes it, but I'm sure you can find it online. Armed only with a dagger hidden within the folds of her baggy cloak, Eridani returned to the city that wanted her dead. The constables barely glanced at her when she passed through the city gates. No one expected the renegade princess to walk into the patriarch's stronghold. All the constables saw was another peasant seeking her fortune in Scotland. Eridani proceeded with caution, avoiding patrols and maintaining a brisk but steady pace that helped her blend in with the young messengers and apprentices running errands for their employers. As she walked toward the street of tailors, she was immersed in the laughter of children and sing-song patter of merchants trying to entice the passers-by to their stalls. The smells of cured meats, fresh flowers, and exotic spices permeated the air. Horseshoes clanked against the sun-drenched cobblestones. This was the Scotland she had grown used to, the city she had almost considered home. Not the brutal nightmarish side of it she had been exposed to in the last few days. She would have given almost anything to regain the sense of security and the carefree existence she used to enjoy. She pulled the cloak tighter around her shoulders and pressed on. She slowed to a leisurely stall within 100 paces of the house her family rented, looking for any signs of it being watched. She turned back and walked by a second time. There was nothing obvious, but she couldn't be certain. She had to rely on luck and the element of surprise. The patriarch's men would surely not think either Daintree or her foolish enough to return. On the third pass, she ducked into the shadow of the servants' entrance and rushed to the second floor, skipping steps. Thinly carpeted wooden planks groaned under her weight. She reached the top of the staircase and found the door to the upstairs rooms ajar. The apartments had been ransacked, picked clean of anything valuable. Eridani winced as she walked through the rooms. Did the patriarch's men loot the place? More likely it was her own servants, people she had trusted to cook her food and sweep her floors, people who, she would have sworn only a week ago, were loyal to her and her brother. She reached Daintree's bedroom. There, on the oak four-square bed, which likely remained in place because it was too heavy to be moved, slept Devon, one of the house staff. He was dressed in clothes from Daintree's wardrobe and stank of cheap wine. Eridani remained still and listened to Devon snore lightly for a few heartbeats, then advanced quietly toward the far corner of the room. There, Daintree had hidden their coins under the floorboard. The bulky wardrobe normally positioned above the hiding place was gone, but the flooring appeared undisturbed. She crouched over the floorboard and drew her dagger. She wedged the blade between the two boards and tried to gently pry them apart. The flooring wouldn't give. She applied more force until the board cracked with a loud crunch. Devon rolled off the bed and growled like a startled cat. He blinked sleep out of his eyes and squinted at the intruder. Their gazes locked, with Eridani still on her knees, crouched over the broken floorboard. What an unexpected surprise! Devon slurred his words slightly. He advanced on Eridani, and she stood up until they were facing each other. He was a head taller than her. Muscles played under Daintree's tunic, which was barely large enough to fit Devon. You came back just in time. I ran out of wine and out of things to sell for more. But you will fetch your weight in decent brandy, won't you? Have you no loyalty? No shame? Eridani looked up into Devon's bloodshot eyes. My family treated you well. Loyalty? Ha! Devon closed the distance between them, forcing Eridani to retreat a step. What has a stuck-up bitch like you or your pompous fool of a brother ever done to earn my loyalty? Don't flatter yourself. You've never been anything but a meal ticket. Eridani was on him in a flash. Had he been sober and alert, she might not have risked an attack. As it was, she surprised him. Devon stumbled back as he tried to keep away from the blade she wielded. Eridani used his own momentum, pushing him, causing the servant to fall over backward and hit with the wooden floorboard. Before he could gather his wits, she was on top of him, her dagger pressed against the flesh of his neck below the chin, while her left hand pulled his head back by the strands of his tangled blonde hair. How dare you threaten me? She spoke through clenched teeth, hoping that her anxiety would sound like anger. I am the princess of Kojad, born of the ancient bloodline of warrior kings. On a bad day, I could cut down 10 lowborn brutes like you without breaking a sweat. She pulled harder on his hair. Do you know what I'm taught to do with traitors? The servant shivered in her hands. Mercy, he whispered. There was no hint of bravado left in his voice. He looked like a large, scared child. Eridani stared at the beads of sweat forming on Devon's forehead. It would take almost no effort to let the blade dig deeper. She had already killed once. She remembered being surprised at how little resistance the sword encountered as it enters a man's back. Is that what she was now? A ruthless killer? Could she afford to be anything else? If she spared Devin's life, how long would it take him to run to the constables? She pressed the blade deeper into his flesh and drew blood. Devon whimpered. She showed him the cheap dagger she had pilfered from Lady Variana's estate. A few drops of his blood stained its blade. This is a poison dagger, she said, thinking of danger. The blade was dipped in the venom of desert scorpions from the far south. The wind sat up and clutched at the cut of his neck. He shook like a toddler in winter. Betray me again, and you will die a slow, painful death, said the Eridani. Prove yourself loyal, and I'll give you the cure. She was risking her life to save danger. Would this creature do any less to protect his own? What must I do? Asked the servant. She crossed her arms and waited. What must I do, mistress? He said, and offered an awkward bow, his hand still clutching his neck. There is another traitor, a caravan master named Tura. Today, you will have your cut tended and sleep off your wine. Tomorrow, you will kill him for me. She pointed at the door. Go. If you succeed, return for your cure at sundown the day after tomorrow. Eridani had no illusions about the fumbling drunk's chances of killing Tura. Most likely, he would meet his end at the hands of the caravan master's sellswords. If so, it was the death he deserved, delivered a day late. But then there was some remote chance of him ambushing Tura and getting away alive. And if he somehow succeeded, by the time he learned there was no poison in his body, Eridani would be long gone from Skond. She watched Devon leave and turned her attention to the damaged floorboard, but couldn't retrieve the coins until her hands stopped trembling. No one stood guard at the entrance to the sorceress's estate. Her reputation, combined with the superstitious nature of most people, was protection enough. Eridani pushed open the metal gate and walked into the wild garden. Twisted, malformed trees surrounded the sorceress's home. Bushes and grass grew wild, seemingly untended for decades. She picked her way through the undergrowth, careful not to twist an ankle. Such a large plot of land inside the city walls must have cost a fortune, but Skond's only practitioner of the arcane could afford it. Eridani didn't fear magic because she didn't believe in it. Her father had always cautioned that everything in the world could be explained in a rational manner. Only the ignorant attributed what they couldn't understand to the meddling of gods, demons, or sorcerers. The old witch had the cure for the poison that was killing her brother, and Eridani would bargain for it, as she might with any healer or alchemist. Ivy crawled up the castle-like walls of the large house. Eridani tried the heavy front door. It creaked as it opened. The cavernous hall was not lit. Eridani took a few steps inward and stopped to let her eyes adjust to the dark. Hello? She called out, but no one replied. The house seemed abandoned. Eridani walked around the hall. The house was 3 stories high, but she could find no ascending staircase. The only path she found led in the opposite direction. She felt her way down the steep incline, resting her hand on the wall for support. The long corridor continued to descend. Deeper down, she could see no light at all. She advanced slowly, feeling ahead with her toes before taking each step. A dim candle flared up on the wall next to her. Startled, Eridani looked around, but the candle gave off more smoke than light and revealed nothing but a small area of bare corridor. Hello? Eridani tried again. When no one answered, she pressed on. A new candle lit up every dozen steps. Eventually, the floor leveled out, but the walls extended outward in both directions. She was standing at the entrance into another large hall. She took a few tentative steps forward, and a dozen candles positioned in an oval formation flickered to life. Even so many of them together provided little illumination. Shadows swirled in the center of the hall. Eridani squinted. She could make out a shape hidden in the shadows. She took several more steps toward the center. The shadows shifted right in front of her, like a tangle of ethereal snakes. Someone moved within, cloaked in darkness. Hello? She said for the 3rd time. The shadows parted, and an enormous ogre stepped through. The monster bent down until it was face to face with Eridani, less than an arm's reach away. It was gray or dark green, she couldn't quite tell in the dark. Its face was a caricature of a man, seemingly too large for its form, misshapen, like an unfinished clay molding. She could smell decay in its breath. It bared its fangs, each pointed canine the size of her fist, and roared a deafening challenge full of primeval rage. Eridani stood her ground. Show yourself, sorceress, she said. Save your illusions for others. I know there are no mythical monsters in the world. The ogre stared at her for a moment. Then its visage melted and dropped to the ground in a cascade of sand. Magic tricks, thought Eridani. Better magic tricks than that she had seen at carnivals, but magic tricks nonetheless. The candles flared up, illuminating more of the oval hall, and revealed a woman in a flowing green gown standing at the far end of it. Her hair was white, and her face full of wrinkles, but she stood straight and carried herself with apparent ease. She was smiling. That is precious, she said, stepping forward. Well done on seeing past the mirage, but to assume there are no monsters? Ha! Oh, to be so young and foolhardy again. Eridani thought it best to swallow the insult. She pressed her palm to the center of her chest, a respectful greeting among equals. I am Eridani of Kajad. The old woman offered a mocking bow. The name is Oshek the Seer. It's a little exotic for your tongue, so feel free to call me sorceress. I need your help, Oshek Eridani was sure she mangled the pronunciation. I seek the cure for the poison of the red desert scorpion. Straight to the point, eh? And why should I bother to help you? Eridani held up a purse of coins she had retrieved from under the floorboard. I can pay. Gold is meaningless to me, said the sorceress. I can transmute as much as I need from the base elements. Eridani wasn't deterred. There are many tales of you accepting coin in exchange for your services. Those tales are told by people who are either too ashamed or too afraid to disclose the real bargains they'd struck. Eridani suspected the witch was merely trying to up her price. But then, she really could have all the gold she needed, whether she came by it by supernatural means or not. What bargain would you strike with me then? The sorceress walked around Eridani, studying her as one might a statue. Can you offer me power, influence, secrets? Those are true commodities, not some metal or stones that glint prettily in sunlight. The cure is for my brother, said Eridani. He is the king of Koshad. Surely it would benefit you to be in the good graces of a king. The sorceress continued to circle her. My bargain is with you, not your brother. He may be a king, but it's you who dare to enter my abode on his behalf. She stopped in front of Eridani. Permit me to read your future. Eridani looked at the sorceress with suspicion. You want to study my palm or cast bones? The old woman chuckled. True divination isn't a parlor trick. All that's required is your consent. Then I shall know whether you'll ever possess anything I might want. Eridani sighed. Go on then. The sorceress stood still and stared straight at Eridani, but her eyes seemed to be focused elsewhere, as though she were looking somewhere far away. A rustling sound came from the dark corners of the hall, but the red flames took on an orange hue. They flicked as if caressed by the wind, even though Eridani felt no breeze. The candles flared up, and the sorceress refocused on Eridani. The smirk was gone from her face. Her pupils were wide, and she regarded Eridani as though she saw her for the first time. You have a complex and ambiguous destiny, she said. Much of your future is a mystery, even to an adept like me. There is potential for both greatness in you and great evil, and your path is lined with many difficult choices. Eridani had visited a seer at a carnival once. There, a fat woman stirred coffee grounds and delivered vague prophecies. Hers were about the promise of future happiness and requited love, rather than difficult choices and destiny. But Eridani couldn't shake the feeling of similarity. She put no stock in the empty predictions of either fortune teller. Will you help me, sorceress? I will take a chance on you, yes, said the sorceress. After all, the investment is small enough. You might prove to be of great value to the invisible god someday. Eridani hadn't heard of an invisible deity, but with so many pantheons of gods being worshipped across the heart, she wasn't surprised. She waited for the witch to name her price. I will give you the antidote for the poison to deliver to your brother. In return, I will ask a favor of you sometime in the future, and you must grant it no matter what, if it is within your power. Do you accept? Eridani thought back to the fairy tales and legends, where the hero was suckered into what he or she felt was an easy bargain. They were meant as cautionary tales, but those characters were usually in a position where they had something to lose, whereas she thought she was paying a smaller price than the value of the coins in her purse. What favor could she possibly grant this witch? She was going to leave Skand, and their paths would most likely never cross again. And besides, fairy tale heroes always found ways to outsmart the devils they bargained with. I swear it, Eridani said. The sorceress plucked a small blown glass vial out of thin air. It was filled with a viscous liquid the color of ash. Have your brother drink this. Eridani accepted the vial. Her hand brushed up against the hand of the sorceress, which felt leathery and cold. Make haste, said the sorceress. Save your brother if you can. He is the only one you can rely upon. Beside him, everyone you know and trust will come to betray you. It may have been the chill of the underground hall, but Eridani shivered. These words stayed with her as she left the sorceress's home, clutching the vial in her hand underneath the cloak. Only after the afternoon sun warmed her skin was she able to shrug off the ominous prophecy. And of course, as in the fairy tales, those kind of bargains always bite you in the ass. So if you'd like to read more, the book is available in audio, ebook, paperback, hardback, in just about every format imaginable. Thank you.